Hey YouTube friends, so I wanted to make a video of what I would do if today in November of 2022, I was starting over from ground zero trying to get into real estate investing. And I remember when I first started in real estate. I'm not talking as an agent. We started buying rental properties when we had normal jobs before I was a real estate broker, and just wanting to buy rental property and invest in real estate and being so frustrated because I saw all these people, I don't know, I think probably online and on HGTV and stuff like that, and they were investing and flipping, and they seemed like they were doing it at such a large scale, and I was working so hard, and I felt like my progress was so slow, and it was discouraging. And I knew the things I was doing were the right things, and I was going to be in the right place as time progressed. But when I was, in my younger 20s, I just wanted to be farther along. And my husband would always remind me, like, who are you comparing yourself to, right? And so I'd be like, oh, this person who has all these investment properties. And he was like, that person's 40 something. You're 22, and then you're 25, and then you're 27, and everyone grows at different rates, but it is hard to get into real estate investing. And even more so today, I hear people say, well, you could do it 30 years ago, but now it's just not possible, and there's no way. And it is possible to get started with anything at any time, but maybe it's a different way than what it was in the beginning. So buying investment properties in the 70s and in the 80s and post 2008, which I missed that boat. I saw a meme the other day that said, it was super funny. One of the lenders in town posted it, something like, my biggest mistake was being in 8th grade after the 2008 housing crash, so I couldn't buy rental properties. And I was like, oh, that's super funny. You can't fight timing. It just is what it is. But the number one thing I can tell you is, if you're one of those people who, I spend a lot of times on real estate forums and websites like Bigger Pockets, and there's so many free resources online, and there's people that are using the resources, and then there's people that are just on there complaining that it's not possible and it can't be done.
I'm not happy. I don't like this chair, and I don't like this desk, and I don't like being here. I'm a grumpy old man. I don't like everything the way it is now compared to the way it used to be.
If you're just going to complain all the time, it can't be done, because you're not going to see the possibility to look for opportunities. And I'm not one of those people who's like, manifest, and it will happen. Like, you have to work hard, but if you don't believe that you can do it, you're not going to do it. So you can whine about it, but like, whine while you're working, and that you're not, cry and work, right? But like, don't just cry and sit on your couch and use that as an excuse for why you're not working. So it's totally possible. So if I was going to start today, the thing that I think I would think of is, okay, how can I get into real estate if I'm not in a position to buy? And then how can I get into real estate if I am in a position to buy like one property? So I'm gonna start with, if you own a home or are able to own a home, and then transition into if you're renting or gonna be renting and you're not in a position to make a purchase at this time, things you can do within that rental that makes sense for you to start processing toward being a real estate investor, and even being a real estate investor without purchasing real estate, because it is possible. And if you stay tuned till the end, I have a surprise. It has nothing to do with real estate at all. So I'll bait and switch you like all the big YouTubers do. But I have a very special surprise that has nothing to do with real estate that I'll show you at the very end. So, okay, let's get started though. I took a couple notes for myself because, as you can tell, I'm all over the place when I talk. So if I owned a home and I had already purchased a home, I wasn't like trying to buy a home that made sense for real estate. It was my primary home. When you buy your primary home, there's a lot of advantages as far as not having to have as large of a down payment. So I think we all know, if you buy an investment property that you don't live in, if you bought a triplex and lived in one unit, you could do an FHA loan and do 3.5% down. But if you're just buying a flat out investment property, you're probably gonna have to come up with at least 20% down, or maybe 15 with some lender friendly or investor friendly lenders, but you're gonna have some less favorable loan terms. So I would say, if I just had a house and I was like, you know what, I wanna get into real estate investing, I would rent my room one of two ways. If you have more than a 1-bedroom house, you can just get a roommate, and then you can sack away all that money that you're making off of the roommate, and set aside to save towards investing in your next property. Or you could space share on a short-term rental site like Airbnb or one of those other type of pages. I don't want to say VRBO because I think they rent whole houses. I'm not sure. Or Furnished Finder, depending on your area. They are a website that I think you pay $99, don't quote me on that, a year to be on. And what they do is you put your ad on there and then they match you with professionals in the area who might be there. I have a friend that does it for traveling nurses. She's a single lady. They might be there for 6 months. They might be there for 6 weeks. I mean, I'm sure you can negotiate the terms, but you can rent a room so you don't have to have a whole separate property. You're just making some income off of the space that you have to set aside to invest in that first property. A really great thing would be, depending on the structure of your home, can you find a way to make part of your house separate? And this is going to be limited by zoning laws and your construction knowledge and investment. But like, say you have a house that, I have a friend that one of the houses they used to live in, they had a walkout basement. So they separated and made a separate access so it was a little bit more private, and he had that on a short-term rental site. But you also could just rent that because you put a little kitchenette down there and make it a basement apartment. And then you have 2 separate units, and then you're cash flowing, right? So even if it's paying just a portion of your mortgage that you were paying anyway, and that's money you can set aside. So that's an option. Do you have a loft like above your garage that you can convert to an apartment? These are things if you own a home. And like I said, we're going to get to, if you are renting or going to be renting, what are some options for you? Short-term rentals are a great option if you want to just rent a space of your home, or if you could separate a portion of your home out. But always keep in mind, some mortgages are not going to allow short-term rentals. So you want to make sure that you're not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize that situation for yourself. Now, I think the position that most people are in when they're like, oh, the possibility of investing is so far away from me. I can't buy right now. I'm only renting. What can I do? Well, here's the deal. There's a lot you can do. You just have to be creative. So if you're going to rent a house, can you rent something that you could put a roommate in? I know it's not fun. I know it's not easy, but here's the deal. Life is hard. So you can pick your hard. You can pick, do I want to buckle down and struggle for a couple of years? Or do I want to put myself in a bad position because I'm not willing to sacrifice and have it be hard forever? I remember when me and my husband first started in like our real jobs after college, we both had master's degrees. We really weren't making that much for having master's degrees. We had huge minimum monthly student loan payments. And everyone around us was buying, like back in the day, like I remember looking at this house and it was like a $250,000 house. And right now in my market, it would be like 4. And I remember thinking it was so nice and I would never be able to afford a home like that, and just loving that house. And now like what you can get for that is way different. But back then I remember thinking like, such a nice house. I'll never be able to afford that house. And after college, everybody was buying these 250,000, like that was my little like unicorn, right? So whatever it is for you, everyone was getting like nice trucks after college and nice cars and buying their nice house. And for me, I always knew what I wanted. I always knew I wanted to invest in real estate, and I always knew I wanted to be financially secure. So I made a lot of sacrifices early on. And so we bought a little townhouse that we knew we're going to live in it and save money, and we're going to pay off our student loans as fast as we can. And then this will be a rental property one day. And so we just bought a house, lived in it, fixed it up, bought another house, lived in it, fixed it up, and always lived beneath our means. But that was how we were able to, because if we had bought a house that was really expensive, we wouldn't have been able to have the debt to income ratio to then buy another property. We had to buy something that fit within that so we could keep that property without having to sell it when we bought our next property. And so that was always something I kept in mind, and I always sacrificed along the way. If I were going to, this didn't even exist back then, but this is so cool. If I wanted to get into real estate investing and I couldn't buy, and I had a little bit of money to invest or very little money, and even if you can rent out a room, but there's something I'm seeing a lot of people doing. It's like rental arbitrage, right? So they are renting a property, and with permission of the owner or the landlord or the corporation that owns it, if it's like an apartment complex, then they're subleasing it out on Airbnb or as a short-term rental for a higher rate. Now, one, you have to make sure that you get the permission to do that from whoever you're renting from. And they may allow it and they may not. One reason they may not is maybe they have a mortgage on it and their lender doesn't allow that, or their insurance doesn't allow it. But I can tell you that if somebody wanted to rent one of my long-term rentals and they said, hey, I'm going to use this as a short-term rental, are you okay with that? I would prefer it. because I just put one of my properties on Airbnb as an experiment. It's making twice a month. So there's that gap in there to make more income. The first month is making twice a month what the rent is. It rents for $700 a month as a long-term rental, and I'm slated to make over, and I'll tell you, we'll go over it all at the end of the month, and I'll do a review once I've done it for, a decent amount of time, but I'm slated to make over double. So there's that gap in there to make a profit. I, as a long-term rental owner, as a landlord, would love if one of my renters wanted to do that, because if it's on a short-term rental site, it's getting checked on every day. And the reason I wanted to try a short-term rental is I'm sick of my long-term rentals getting trashed and destroyed. Is it way more work? Yes, we have to manage cleaning. I have to deal with people and the weirdest issues on Airbnb. So that's a whole different can of worms of like people just not like having problem-solving skills. But I thought, do I want to have, extra work up front throughout the year, or do I want to be renovating a house once a year when someone moves out because people destroy it? I have had very bad luck with most of my long-term rentals. So if someone came to me and said, I want to rent one of your units on Airbnb, can I rent it from you and then do that? I would say for sure, because you're going to care for it better because you're checking in on it. So I think that would be a great option. If I wanted to get in real estate investing and I couldn't afford to buy a house, I would buy it, or I would sign a lease with permission of the landlord. I would put it on Airbnb. I would do all those services, and I would keep the gap of the income. Keep in mind, whether it's rented or not, you're still going to owe that payment, and you're going to have to furnish it. So there's going to be some upfront expenses, but it's much less than a 20% down payment of actually purchasing a property. So I think this rental arbitrage thing for short-term rentals is amazing. It's crazy. Like, these websites didn't even exist when I started, or if I did, they were in their infancy. And so to do something like that, to be able to make money off of a real estate investment on a lease instead of having to buy something, it's crazy. There are people that have whole Airbnb empires off of units that they have rented. Now, I would say don't grow too fast, because something like COVID, say you're like, I'm going big, I'm going to lease 10 units, and then no one's traveling, you still got to pay the leases on 10 units, whether they're rented or not. So you want to grow responsibly and set that money aside, just like growing any business as you go. But that's huge. That's an awesome resource. To do the rental arbitrage thing, whether you're renting out a portion of your rental that you live in and you rent a piece of it out, or you just are completely renting something that you're never going to live in, that is an amazing, amazing opportunity to sack that money aside, to set it away, and then be able to invest it in something. You could be a real estate investor without ever actually owning a property. And I don't want you to be discouraged by living in a small town. I held off for the longest time on Airbnb because I thought, like, oh yeah, like if you live by Disneyland or you live in a touristy area, I live in a small town of like 25,000 people on I-80. So we have a big interstate going through, and most of my people are just short-term, staying for the night. I'm tired, I need somewhere to stay. There's nothing to see here, nothing to do here. We have a lot of traveling workers. Not saying there's nothing to do here, but it's not a traveler's destination. And I am still like booked. And as a brand new Airbnb host, I think I have like at least 20 days a month booked on my first month. And so it's possible. It's possible in a variety of locations. And you could do that whether it was a property I owned that I had kept as a long-term rental, but you could do that even if that was just something you leased and then were subleasing out with permission on Airbnb. So man, there's some cool opportunities. And we talk about like the way you can't do it now as opposed to how you used to be able to do it. But guess what? You can't, someone that's 80 that started investing years and years ago and had to build their own freaking house that they rented out. They're like, I sure wish I could just lease a house from somebody for $700 and make $1,500 off of it, pay my lease. Like, that's a lot of cash flow. It's a lot of work, yeah, but like nothing worth doing is easy. Like, I'm not here to tell you it's easy. Like, basically, to be successful in real estate, what you have to do is work hard and suffer for like 10 years. That's what I did. But like, there's new ways to get into it that didn't exist back when I started. Just like, there were things that worked then that don't work now. And so you have to evolve, and you have to not be like so negative that you're looking for ways for it not to work. You have to find the solutions. So that's all I got for you guys today, but it is very possible to get into real estate from ground zero in November of 2022, regardless of what's going on in our world and with interest rates. So that's it, friends. If you've stayed till the end, you're a champion. And I told you I have a very special surprise, not real estate related. Are you ready for it? Are you ready for it? added a new member to our family. You've seen my other babies. I have my big kitty Tuna, and I have my dog Athena that you guys see all the time. And Athena had a friend that passed away, or Tuna had a friend that passed away in January. She was our kitty and we loved her so much. She was very old, and Tuna's been very, very lonely. We've been nervous to get her a friend. They're not friends yet, but this is our new little baby and we're hoping they can bond. She doesn't have a name yet. We got to get to know her personality, but I think I'm gonna name her Smudge. That's her nickname right now. So if you have any name suggestions for this little sweetheart, she's a girl, I would love for you to leave your name suggestions in the comments. And thanks for staying to check out my new little girl. She's lovely. So if you stayed this long, I appreciate you. Thank you. And please go subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Boop that like button and share this video with your friends. And follow the steps in this video, because if you want to make it work, you can. See ya.